The chair calls to order this September 28th, 2021 regular meeting of the Scottsdale Unified Number 48 Governing Board. The time is 6:01 p.m. We will move to the Pledge of Allegiance as led by Ingleside Middle School ambassadors. I would like to invite Dr. Junior Michael to introduce the ambassadors, and then we will move to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good evening, Dr. Menzel. Am I on? Is this on? Good. Check. I'm good. All right. Dr. Menzel, President Greenberg, Governing Board members, my name is Junior Michael. I am the proud principal at Ingleside Middle School, and with me, I have our student ambassadors, and they're going to lead us through the Pledge of Allegiance.
The chair will have a roll call starting from the right.
Zach Lindsay.
Libby Hart-Wells.
Julie Sanowski.
Jan Michael Greenberg. All 5 board members are present, and there is a quorum. The board will now move to agenda item 2D, approval of agenda, board action required. We have a request to move agenda item 7A so that it occurs after agenda item 5. Are there any other requests for amendment? With no further requests, the chair moves to approve the agenda as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Vice President Sanowski seconds. It is moved and seconded that the board approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 5-0. The board will move to agenda item 3A, public comments notification. Please note that originally, due to time constraints, public comment would have been limited to 30 minutes, with each speaker being given 3 minutes. As board president, I am waiving the 30-minute limit, but we are reducing the amount of time to speak from 3 minutes to 2 minutes to accommodate all of the speakers tonight. All right. The board will now move to agenda item 4, student and staff recognitions and celebrations. Dr. Menzel.
Good evening, President Greenberg, Vice President Sanowski, and members of the Governing Board. There's an old, although still relevant saying that it takes a village to raise a child. We see examples of that every day here at Scottsdale Unified School District. One particular example became known last month at Cochise Elementary School. Here to tell us about it, Dr. Heiniga, our Assistant Superintendent of Elementary Education, Dr. Heiniga.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel, and good evening, Governing Board members, President Greenberg, and Ms. Wagner. Today I come to you with a great deal of excitement to celebrate one of our own. Dr. Menzel, we would not be nearly as successful at where we are here at SUSD with our accomplishments in all of our 29 schools without the assistance of those who sometimes very quietly play very key roles. Today, these individuals are critical to the effective functioning of our schools, and we would be lost without them. Cochise Elementary School Principal Sheila Miller is here tonight to introduce you to one of those individuals, Mr. Charles Hamilton, who brings dedication and commitment with a smile and a stop sign to her school every day. I'd like to invite Mrs. Miller and Ms. Aikman here to our podium tonight.
So good evening, President Greenberg, Vice President Sanowski, Governing Board members, Dr. Menzel, and Mrs. Wagner. Dr. Aikman and I are so glad to be here this evening to celebrate one of our Cochise employees, Charles Hamilton. Charles has been part of our community for the past 3 years, and as you can see, he also gets the Best Dressed Award. at our school. So, Charles works as a crossing guard and a noon aide in our cafeteria, and he really embodies the qualities that we look for in employees at our school. He shows up for work early, he rarely misses a day of work, and he takes his job very seriously, understanding that children are at the forefront of everything we do at our school. He greets students and families in the morning with a big smile and helps students in the cafeteria with their lunches. Students look forward to seeing him every day, and our staff consider you a huge part of our community, Charles. Charles recently celebrated his 80th birthday in August, and our community staff and students, along with Dr. Menzel, came out to help him celebrate. So I wanted to say the thing that inspires me most about you, Charles, is your gratitude and graciousness every day you come to work. So Dr. Aikman is going to share a message from one of our students.
So Charles, this message comes to you from Hannah Iacavali, and she writes, I look at Mr. Charles walking up and down the lunch tables. I see one kid drop a blueberry, same thing every day. He swoops down and sweeps it into the dirty dustpan. Mr. Charles is our hero at our school. He's been here for quite a while now. He's kind, he works every day if he wants to or not, and always tries his best no matter what. Also, a few weeks ago, Mr. Charles turned 80 years old. Wow. I really think Mr. Charles is the best because he works so hard, and he's just, all in all, just an 11 out of 10. We love you, Mr. Charles.
Mr. Charles, we want to say thank you for choosing Cochise and for displaying these extraordinary kindness and qualities every single day. We'd like to present you with a coin for excellence, and we want to thank you for everything that you do. Thank you, Mr. Charles. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Charles, for your dedication to the students at Cochise Elementary School. We at SUSD could not do what we do without you and people like you who come every day to support our students and our 28 schools. So thank you very much. I also understand that Dr. Hagigat and Dr. Sakos have another celebration this evening. Dr. Sakos and Dr. Hagigat.
I was having fun over there, Dr. Menzel, but we're ready to celebrate some more. Thank you, Dr. Menzel, and good evening again, President Greenberg, Vice President Sanowski, governing board members, and Ms. Wagner. We are pleased to make a joint presentation to you tonight, with Dr. Sakos and myself.
All right. It is our honor to celebrate the work of Scottsdale Unified's 29 school principals, from pre-K and elementary to middle school, high school, and online learning. SUSD is proud to call the 29 people whose photos you see there on the screen are school leaders who oversee the learning of 20 of the district's 22,000 students and 1,500 teachers. Wow, I really elevated the workforce here in Scottsdale.
We celebrate SUSD principals tonight in advance of National Principal Month that is recognized each October. National Principal Month recognizes the essential role of principals play in making their schools great.
Principals are amongst the hardest working, yet often least recognized individuals in education. Principals set the academic tone for their schools. It is their vision, dedication, and determination that are the mobilizing force for outstanding teaching and student learning success.
In addition to saying a huge thank you to the principals that Dr. Sakos and I work with every day, we want to bring you special attention to two of them who have accomplished something quite extraordinary in these times. I would like to invite Laguna Elementary School Principal Brooke Williams to join me here at the podium. Mrs. Williams recently successfully defended her doctoral dissertation through the North Central University. She has been pursuing her doctoral degree for the past 3.5 years, with her research and writing of her dissertation taking place over the past year. Her dissertation was very fitting for the curriculum of the school that she leads: STEAM education and inquiry-based instruction. She looked in depth of teacher perception about how prepared they feel they are to teach STEAM curricula. She compared the perceptions of teachers who receive long-term professional development with teachers who receive professional development with embedded coaching. Her conclusion will be impactful as she works to support innovative teaching and future-ready instruction for SUSD students. Congratulations, Dr. Williams, and we'd like to present you with an SUSD coin for excellence. Would you like to share some thoughts?
Thank you. It's been a long 3.5 years, and the past year itself, with everything that was going on, was interesting. I do want to thank the teachers that supported me through it, my own teachers, many of them are here today, and then the teachers at Navajo Elementary who helped me with my research as well.
And now I'd like to invite Chris Asmussen up to the podium, please. Yeah. Like Dr. Williams, Dr. Asmussen has been working toward his doctoral degree, which he received in April through Northern Arizona University. For his dissertation, Dr. Asmussen looked at the impact of social networks on how parents choose schools for their children. He was and continues to be interested on how parents, friends, family, and coworkers influence where a parent enrolls their kindergarten through 3rd grade students in a public school. Notably, he found that finding the right school community that supports a child's social and emotional needs was more important than a school's ability to provide outstanding academics. Congratulations, Dr. Asmussen. Would you like to share anything?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, well, the challenge point is.
Thank you, Dr. Sakos. I would really want to thank Scottsdale Unified School District, because it was the district that pushed me to continue my own education. It was a lot of help from Dr. Bachna, who, I don't know where she would be, but Dr. Bachna helped tremendously. Dr. Kim Guerin was on my dissertation committee. Dr. Christopher Treat, who used to be with Scottsdale, also sat on my dissertation committee. The principals that at the schools that I chose to conduct this research at, I'm going to leave that blank out of the confidentiality of the participants that helped me through the study. But really, it was about community, and I owe a lot of gratitude to Scottsdale Unified for pushing me to the finish line and to this degree. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and that concludes this portion of tonight's presentation.
Well,
Celebrations.
Thank you, and congratulations to Dr. Williams and Dr. Asmussen. I will say that having been on the same journey they've been on, doing it in a pandemic is extra commendable. I just don't know how you pulled it off, and you're still vertical. We appreciate all you do for our students, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have a few more successes and celebrations this evening. Turning inward, organizationally speaking, I'm proud to share with all of you that tonight our school district's finance department has once again received the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Association of School Business Officials International for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. So congratulations to Shannon and her team for that recognition. We also want to talk a little bit about some of our performing arts. So as you know from my weekly update, I had the opportunity to attend opening night of Clue at Chaparral High School. It's so wonderful to see our students performing on stage, to enjoy their theatrical abilities, also to recognize the students who are working behind the scenes to make the magic happen, from lighting to makeup to costume and design. Everything was really exciting to experience, and given the impact that the pandemic had on our system last year, we didn't enjoy that in the fall. So it was really wonderful to be in the audience and enjoy their experience. I would also like to point out that in case you have some time and you're interested in enjoying a performance of your own, Desert Mountain High School will have a lighthearted retelling of Homer's Odyssey. The show runs tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday night at 7 p.m. So if you're not familiar with how talented our high school students are and the quality of the direction they receive from the drama teachers, and even if you are familiar, I highly recommend you catch one of these shows if possible. Additionally, our high school marching bands are putting in terrific performances on the field. The 6-time state champion Spirit of Arcadia Marching Band got off to another great start, taking first place and 5 caption awards at last weekend's Arizona Marching Band Association competition at Glendale High School. At the same competition, Desert Mountain High School Marching Band placed second, and our Coronado Dons also had a strong showing. It has been 18 months since our marching bands were able to compete live, so I'm happy to report yet another sign of normal returning to our high school experiences. Also competing last week was the Desert Mountain High School Symphonic Orchestra, which received a superior rating, one of the highest ratings possible at the Arizona Band and Orchestra Association's Fall Orchestra Festival. I want to congratulate all of our students and the staff that support them as they've led the way in the performing arts here in Scottsdale. And I want to thank all of the people who have been here to join in these celebrations this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. The board will now move to agenda item 5, Superintendent's Comments. Dr. Menzel.
Thank you, President Greenberg and members of the governing board. So as usual, I'll start with a brief update with respect to COVID. And as you know, yesterday we had a ruling by the judge related to the challenge to Arizona's provision that would have prohibited a district from requiring a mask mandate. There's a whole lot more in the challenge to the bill as well as in the ruling, but just cutting to the chase, the judge ruled that essentially on procedural grounds, the inclusion of the mask prohibition in the budget reconciliation bill violated Arizona's Constitution because it was not directly connected to the title of the bill, budget reconciliation. And so in that case, the judge ruled that it is unconstitutional. She didn't rule on whether or not a mask mandate itself was constitutional. She ruled on the procedural grounds that inclusion in the budget reconciliation bill violated the single subject provision of the Constitution. We know that the Attorney General has indicated that he plans to appeal the ruling. Having read it myself and having talked with our general counsel, the legal reasoning that's been provided is pretty solid, and it relies heavily on prior Supreme Court determinations related to the provisions of the Constitution. And pursuant to Governing Board Directive 01-2021, following the judge's ruling, it fell to me, in consultation with Maricopa County Department of Public Health, to make a determination about whether or not Scottsdale Unified School District should continue to implement a mask requirement. And as you know from the communication that was sent to our families last night, the decision has been made based on that conversation with the health department to continue the mask requirement. Our community transmission levels of COVID remain in the high level, not even just substantial, but in the high level. If you look at the epi curve on the Maricopa County Department of Public Health website, you'll see that early March of last year, we were about in that moderate transmission range, and that continued through about July 7th, and then we quickly escalated to the high transmission level. And while cases appear to have plateaued and are slightly starting to decrease, we are still at a level where the health department recommends universal masking. In my conversations with Dr. Sonnenschein as recently as this evening, she said, next to vaccination, masking is the second most important strategy to mitigate against COVID spread in our communities. She's also pointed out that, as we know, there's a significant portion of our school-age population still not eligible for the vaccine. So we look for and hope for the opportunity to move to a mask optional policy, but at this time with COVID transmission rates as high as they are in our community, we are going to continue to follow the recommendations of the Public Health Department. We've also had questions about ventilation, and as you know, we've installed MERV 13 filters in our classrooms, and the air is cycled about 7.5 times every hour. So we have a good amount of airflow in every classroom. As the temperatures drop, we have the opportunity to open doors to get increased ventilation in our classrooms. And we are continuing to approach our strategies on a layered basis. So as you know, in talking with public health officials, that it's not just a single strategy that helps ensure that we don't see spread of COVID on our campuses, but it's layered mitigation strategies. The ultimate goal for us as a district is to ensure that we can maximize in-person learning opportunities for all of our students. And as you've seen in the data that we've provided every week, the number of students who have been required to quarantine since we've put the mask requirement in place has dropped significantly. We still don't have one case of any student who was a close contact while masked testing positive for COVID. And we are going to continue to track that data to ensure that we're not missing anything. The final mitigation strategy that we're working on putting in place, and the first pilot will be available next Monday, is working in partnership with In-Office DX to set up PCR testing at 2 of our elementary schools, Cherokee and Navajo. And those will be voluntary. Parents will choose to take their children, and they can do surveillance testing. One of the keys to mitigating spread of COVID on our campus is early detection. And so that will be yet another opportunity for our families to take advantage of. And finally, we are working on a test and stay approach for after fall break, because the last thing we want to do is have healthy students miss school. And so we want to make sure that we're looking at all of the strategies to keep as many of our students in school while also reducing the risk of transmission of COVID. The other thing that I want to point out is that we are continuing to make progress on our strategic planning goals. So we've moved from phase 1 to phase 2. You know that we've adopted our vision, mission, and values for the district. In phase 2, we're focusing on broad goal areas, and those include academic achievement. The framing might be academic excellence. The actual wording is still being developed. We're looking at school and community partnerships. We're looking at culture and climate in our buildings. We're looking at goals related to finance and organizational health and well-being. So the committee is comprised of a diverse group of stakeholders. I'm always impressed by the level of conversation at those committee meetings. We expect to be able to bring forward some of their initial thinking within the next month or so. We've got a meeting the 3rd week in October, and we can bring that to the governing board for review and input before we finalize those recommendations. In addition to goals and objectives, we'll be talking about key performance indicators. At the end of the day, we want to set high goals for ourselves as a district and for our students, high expectations for each one, so that we truly can achieve our vision of providing world-class, future-focused education for all of our students. And with that, that'll conclude my report this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Menzel. The board will now move to agenda item 7A, Student Advisory Board Presentation. Dr. Menzel.
Dr. Sakos, would you like to introduce our president and president-elect of the Student Advisory Board, please?
Dr. Menzel, of course I would like to introduce our Student Advisory Board President, Trex Jones, Arcadia High School junior. As you remember, Trex was the president-elect last year. And new to us this year is Zach Okun. Had to get that correct. And Zach is a junior at Desert Mountain High School, and he is serving in the position of president-elect. So you'll see Zach again next year. So with no further ado, let me just turn it over to our Student Advisory Board leadership team.
Okay, good evening, President Greenberg and Vice President Cisnowski and members of the board, Dr. Menzel and Mrs. Wagner. So we've already went through introductions. So we're going to talk about our members of the Student Advisory Board, and we're going to mention our senators and which schools they are from. First one is Isaac Spire from Arcadia, Tate McDowell from Chaparral, Giselle Rojas Guzman from Coronado, and then Gabrielle Chen from Desert Mountain, Zoe Daly from Saguaro, and joining us on SOL is Haley Holmes from, Haley Holmes on SOL. Yeah, and Zoe, sorry. So what is the Student Advisory Board? The Student Advisory Board is a group of students that come together from different campuses to talk about concerns on the SUSD campuses that could concern one school or all of the schools. And we come together to talk about these problems and possible solutions to these problems. Sorry. And so we're gonna have our update tonight is gonna be on the thought exchange, class rank discussion, and varsity tutors for SUSD students. And leading that is Zach.
Good evening. So first up for our thought exchange update, when the slide switches. Oh, do I do that? I'm sorry. Sorry. So the question we asked this year to all the students was, what are some things you are looking forward to and what are some things that concern you about this year at school? So from this question we asked, we got a lot of results, students from every single high school and students from every single grade level. However, it was online using Thought Exchange. This is our first time using Thought Exchange, so we did have some smaller participation than normal, but we still did get a lot of participation, taking into account technical issues. So again, these are our results. We have 183 participants that responded, 180 thoughts, and 3179 ratings. So of the schools, we have Chaparral taking 33% of the responses, as well as every other high school, including SOL, being accounted for. Very proud of that. We also have grade levels. We have 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, so we're proud that everyone did get a chance to respond. And we had the largest population from our 10th grade students. So of the students that responded, we asked them, as I said before, what are you looking forward to and what are your concerns for the school year? So first we have, what are you looking forward to? So some of the things that students were looking forward to is graduation, moving on to college. They really wanted to, some students, not that they wanted to leave high school, but it's a new part of their lives that they were really looking forward to. They're also very excited for school dances, school events, pep rallies, all that stuff that's able to happen on campus this year that maybe wasn't allowed to happen last year, as well as interactions on campus, new friendships, all that kind of stuff. Where in Maston School, we had students that were looking forward to that. We also had students look forward to learning new things and closing their learning gaps. So they wanted to learn new things. Some of them felt like they didn't learn as much last year, so they're happy to be back on campus this year learning more, as well as different clubs and opportunities at campus, after school, during school. And then there's tutoring and support students are looking forward to, and field trips. So now we're talking about what are they concerned about. So some of the concerns that were shared to us by students were the lack of drug education and awareness, lack of sexual education and awareness, bullying and mental health not taken seriously, the length of the school day and homework that's being given by teachers, including busy work, high school parking and traffic, bathroom cleanliness, products, and restrictions. Where in Maston School, there were students concerned. As I said, we had students on both sides of the spectrum. Students were also concerned about incorrect mask wearing and the COVID-19 spread on campus, as well as insects on campus, equity in department funding. Some of the students were talking about how some departments were overfunded compared to others, and they wanted to see more funding, particularly arts, CTE, that kind of stuff. And then also preferential treatment, whether it depends on the groups or different sports athletes, just preferential treatment by teachers and by staff on campus. Now I'm gonna hand it back to Trex to talk about class rank.
Thank you, Zach. So we're going to be continuing the discussion of class rank from our last year's Student Advisory Board. We also, with this, we met with Dr. Dodd and Dr. Gurman. I'm sorry if I butchered that. But we're going to work on that, and we're going to be talking about this throughout the year. We're going to be surveying students and seeing how they feel about the proposal that we are making. And so, yeah. And the next thing is varsity tutors. We're going to work on spreading the message about varsity tutors and how students can access that. We're going to be using our new social media platform that we're going to be making in the next couple weeks. So give us some time on that, and yeah. And so the next steps with the Student Advisory Board, with all the data that we saw from the Thought Exchange, we're going to be breaking down that data by school and be discussing the issues with the principals and seeing what we could do with that. We're also going to be establishing subgroups and committees to talk about these issues and see proposals or things we can do to stop these problems or work with concerns. And we're also going to be using our social media to talk about these concerns and also work on that. Questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any board member questions or comments? Board Member Hart-Wells.
Thank you. I just want to thank you for being here and doing the kind of work that you're doing. It's very important that we hear the students' voice. That is why we're here, for the students and their educational welfare. So thank you to both of you for stepping up and being leaders in your community.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you.
Are there any other board member questions or comments? Well, I do have a few questions, but I will pass them on to Dr. Menzel because I think they're better answered within the group itself. But thank you very much, as always, for coming here and all the work you do. We really appreciate it. And for those who couldn't attend in person, thank you as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The board will now move to agenda item 6, public comments. As a reminder, each speaker will have 2 minutes for their public comments so that we can fit all the speakers into our agenda. Our first speaker is Patricia Pellet, and our next speaker will be Robin Snyder.
May I begin?
You may begin.
After I filed the recall, I have met the most amazing people, from collecting signatures at various locations and from canvassing my Sonoran Heights community. What hasn't been pleasant is learning about some of the curriculum forced upon our children, violating Arizona parental rights laws. CRT, you may think, was banned in Arizona. However, it's taught through social-emotional learning and social justice. Here are some examples. A 6th grade homework assignment in SUSD asking kids, 1, what is the social order of your family? Who is the most important or respected? What are the roles of each family member? This is appalling to ask little kids this. Why? Because it appears the school district is looking for biases in our kids. Another example, a 4th grade reading assignment in SUSD, a book called Front Desk, full of curse words, and it paints rich and white people and police officers as bad. Why not focus on the majority of people who are good? Stop the segregation in this school district. I teach my boys to love everyone. Anasazi has had complaints about their 4th and 5th graders using foul language. My 2nd grader was reprimanded by the vice principal 2 weeks ago for practicing some of his newly learned words. He said he learned them from the 4th and 5th graders. How can SUSD reprimand students for what they are endorsing in these books? Finally, sex ed. No examples that I have yet in SUSD, but I'm sure they are coming. The famous mayor from Hudson, Ohio, who asked the school board to resign or face child pornography charges over a controversial book asking students to describe their sexual experiences. Oh.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Robin Snyder. If you'll please come up to the podium. Please, your time is up.
My name is Robin Snyder, and I'm a mom to a current SUSD sophomore, as well as mom to 2 other SUSD grads, and my husband and myself also graduated from SUSD and have lived in the district for all of our lives. In the past, when I've been asked by my neighbors and friends about where to send their kids to school, I've given them my sales pitch of why it's so important to go to school with your neighbors, to do life in the community where you live, to share in the activities of your neighbors and get to know them. For decades, SUSD has been known and touted for that community. Until now. These days, I'm receiving more texts and phone calls from friends within SUSD asking what I think they should do. And you know what I tell them? I tell them to pull your kids out. If you've got elementary school kids, head to Great Hearts, head to Rancho Solano, head to Christ Lutheran. For high school families, head to Notre Dame, go to Scottsdale Prep, or better yet, homeschool. You know why I do that? Because I've seen firsthand what's been going on. And not with the interests of their students, nor the parents, nor the taxpayers, but with the interest of what's behind this board. And I'm frustrated by it. I feel like the focus that once used to be spent on reading, writing, and arithmetic is now talking about things like the meaning of the N-word, as was the topic yesterday in the freshman class, English class at Chaparral. I was gonna play it for you here, but I don't have the time, but it's pretty interesting stuff. In addition, you told our kids they only had to comply with the masks until today, September 28th. You reiterated it every day on morning announcements, and they were counting on you. You adults that they have counted on for everything, and once again, you have let them down and us down. If you truly cared about the science, you would look at the studies that have shown how masks not only don't prevent nor protect, all they do is create a barrier to learning as communication and understanding is impeded because the kids can't read the teacher's lips and the teachers can't understand what the kids are saying, not to mention the impact on their mental health. SUSD is on the chopping block, and although you may not
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Emmy Cardella.
Good evening, Governing Board, Dr. Menzel, Ms. Wagner. My name is Emmy Cardella. I'm here for the Scottsdale Parent Council just to give you an update for the month of what we have upcoming and to share with our parent community as well. Our October monthly meeting is October 20th. It's a nighttime meeting from 6 to 7 p.m. It's at the Mojave District Annex, and we have Dr. Michelle Watt, the Chief Systems Officer, joining us to give a presentation, and then as well as take questions from parents. And as always, Dr. Menzel joins us for a brief Q&A at the beginning as well. And we have Spanish interpretation at all of our general meetings. That's something we really need help spreading the word on, so anyone who is involved in that community, please help us spread the word. And then at the end of the month, on October 28th, we have two events. In the morning, we have a PTO roundtable, so that's an opportunity for anyone involved in the parent organizations and any of the schools to come together and have some discussions. That's also at the MDA from 9 to 10:30 in the morning. And then that night, we have a training on IEPs, and that is in Spanish. So that's over Zoom, and that is presented by Raising Special Kids and open to anyone. So again, help us spread the word on that. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Bryn Diffusco.
Good evening, Governing Board. I apologize if I'm going to be reading very quickly now that I'm limited to 2 minutes. I was struggling to get into 3 minutes. My name is Bryn Cantor DeFusco. My husband and I have been SUSD parents since 2012. Our family's experience within SUSD has been overwhelmingly positive, and I'm not here to complain, but I do have a concern. According to Sophia Kirby of the Center for American Progress, as our nation becomes more diverse, it is crucial that our institutions reflect this diversity. Our communities of color are America's future, and it's important that we not only prepare them as future leaders, it's also crucial that we expose white educators, parents, and students to diverse, equitable, and inclusive leadership, instruction, and activities. Doing so also ensures that Scottsdale's future leaders are more competitive in an increasingly global economy. On June 15th of 2020, SUSD sought written quotations from qualified consultant services in diversity, equity, and inclusion. The RFQ indicated that the Committee for Diversity and Inclusion would meet from time to time during the school year and use the consultant as a guest speaker or workshop facilitator. Many of us would like to know the status of this committee. Diamond Strategies, one of the nation's leading DEI firms, reached out to SUSD after being encouraged to do so by a number of highly respected leaders in the community. Despite the fact that they've worked successfully with numerous school districts internationally and obviously within the United States, no one responded to them. Forward-thinking and successful districts establish DEI as a top priority. Diamond Strategies can help inoculate SUSD from cultural blind spots and the viral financial costs of doing business and education as usual. How can we say that we're committed to inclusion while ignoring the outreach of DEI business leaders? I'm not alone in my hope that our district will get serious about diversity and inclusion. Based on the ubiquitous incidents motivated.
Thank you for your time. Our next speaker will be Victoria Kozlarek. Ooh, did I pronounce that correctly? No. Kozlarek.
Hi, I'm Victoria Kozlerich, and I've been a Scottsdale property owner for 20 years and a full-time resident here for 10. In making my comments today, I'd like to start by zooming out a bit to talk about why all of us are here, and it has to do with responsibility. The fundamental responsibility of elected officials is the safety and security of those they've been elected to serve. Local, state, federal, doesn't matter. This is a basic that all public servants have in common. For you, this responsibility is to the students, the faculty, and the staff of SUSD. Fulfilling this responsibility is essential to governance. Providing safety and security makes education possible. During the pandemic, fulfilling that responsibility requires doing what you can do to keep students, teachers, and staff healthy through requiring masks and vaccines and social distancing and all of the things all of us have been wrestling with for the last 18 months. I want to thank you for your perseverance and your determination to continue to fulfill this most basic mission. Your job isn't easy, and it's been made harder by those who want to fight you every step of the way because, of course, they know best. There are lots of voices in this room, some outdoor voices and some indoor voices. Each of us has something to say, but you're the ones responsible for getting things done for the safety and well-being of students, teachers, and staff. You're doing the right things for the right reasons, and I thank you for staying the course.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rob Valls.
Superintendent Menzel, President Greenberg, the Governing Board, Mrs. Wagner, good evening. I'm Rob Valls, the father of an SUSD student from Desert Mountain, currently attending the SCORE program at Arcadia. A few months back, I spoke to you about the frustrations that my wife and I had with the district special education program. From that meeting, district staff reached out to my family to discuss their concerns, but unfortunately, after that, once again, we hit a dead spot in communication. It was only after more emails, phone calls, did we finally get the information we had been requesting since March. This information only arrived a few days before the start of the school year, and while we are happy that our son is in the SCORE program now, the last-minute nature of this effort on the part of the district is unacceptable. It is hard enough to navigate the district with a special education child, and I sometimes feel like the district is working against us. Over the past few weeks, I've met virtually with other parents who have, with kids in special education, who share these frustrations. I would ask the district and the board to consider meeting with special education parents concerned with the accessibility to information about the district programs and special services, and consider expanding the district website to include detailed descriptions of every special service program available in the Scottsdale district. Finally, I'd like to thank you for the mask mandate and sticking to the science. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Corrine Werner.
Good evening. My name is Karen Warner, and I'm the mother of a current SUSD student and 2 graduates. When I put my kids in public school, I put them in SUSD because it had a stellar reputation for excellence in education. It didn't need a $156,000 marketing campaign budget to draw kids to the district. Its pure reputation and verifiable results spoke for itself. No one here put their kids in SUSD because of any of you people. No board members, no superintendents, any of that. So much has changed, and the students are being withdrawn at an alarming rate. This is especially because of your appalling COVID protocols and mandates and your misinformation behind SEL. Per Maricopa County Department of Health, 479 children out of over 700,000 between the ages of 5 to 18 have been hospitalized due to COVID in 8.3 months. That's 58 cases a month. I'm certain hospitals are not going to be overwhelmed with 58 children between ages 5 to 8. If the masks are your way to keep students healthy and protecting the children's health, why are you not helping them with actually supporting their immune systems by providing nutrition, healthy vitamin-rich foods, maybe even some little vitamin packets in a bottle of water in the morning? Anyways, I am certain that all of this rigmarole that you guys are doing is just a cover-up for Menzel's lackluster stats from his previous employment, where students are proficient in English language arts at the end of third grade started at 51.3% and ended at 43.3%. Students' proficiency in math and English in grades 3 through 8 started at 32%, ended at 29.6%. And the SAT college and career readiness benchmarks went from 31.5% to 24.2%. We're really not interested in this. We want to get back to actual education with math, English, and all.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lincoln Wirtz. Wers. Thank you.
My name is Lincoln, and I'm a sixth grader in the SUSD school. This weekend, I went to the gym with my father and noticed that almost nobody was wearing a mask. They were sweating and basically on top of each other, but no masks. After the gym, we went home to watch some football. I noticed almost 100,000 people screaming at the top of their lungs with no masks. That evening, our family went to a crowded restaurant and there were no masks.
Like where you go to the bar.
Why would we mask only the people that are safest from this virus? We, the children, are the safest from this virus. Every teacher in my school has had the chance to be vaccinated. We now know that the vaccinated gets the virus and can spread the virus just as easily as the unvaccinated people.
You've seen the science, right, guys?
Why would the vaccinated be scared of the unvaccinated with this science? It seems like the unvaccinated would be the only ones to get worried about catching COVID, whether it be from a vaccinated or an unvaccinated person. I am not worried. I'm not worried because the science says I'm safe from the virus. What I'm not safe from is headaches, not seeing my teacher's face, getting sick from a muzzled and with a dirty rag all day, and your politics.
Your politics.
I am not safe from your politics. Yes. There is no mandate in the history of our country for a virus that has a 99.987% survival rate.
None.
The flu
None.
is 400% more deadly than COVID to children.
Is that a
Yet
lot?
not one person in this room said anything about masks to combat the flu.
Did anyone here forget the flu? Anyone hear about masking the flu?
While we sit here about the masking people that are safe, my classmates can barely read and.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mahmoud Hussein. Sir, please. Sir, please. Our next speaker will be Mahmoud Hussein. Is there a Mahmoud Hussein? I apologize, was I not pronouncing your name correctly? Oh, okay.
Dr. Menzel, Madam President, Madam Vice President, Governing Board. Here right now, and I gotta tell you, I really appreciate that you guys are following science. I appreciate that you guys are following the CDC. I appreciate that you guys are following the Maricopa County Health Department. You're working with these people who are licensed medical professionals with years of experience. And you guys are charged with protecting my 2 kids. So keep doing what you're doing. Don't listen to these people, because just because you can get COVID and survive doesn't mean you should get COVID and survive. We're only just now beginning to start studying the long-term effects. And half of this school district Half of the school district is not even eligible to be vaccinated right now. Please keep protecting our children. That's all I needed to say. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tim Curtis.
Good evening, board members, staff. I'm Tim Curtis, 11 years in the Scottsdale Unified School District. Thank you for your public service first, especially staff. Thank you very much. I think you should listen to everybody. That's really important. I really appreciate the weekly updates. That's very helpful, so thank you, and the email. But regarding COVID, I'm not here to tell you to do anything, but I am asking you to stop doing some of the things that you guys started. There are scientists on both sides of the issue, a lot of people on both sides of the issue, nurses on both sides of the issue. Some are losing their job because of the mandates. So I want to ask you to stop picking sides. Stop the mandates, stop ticking people off. It's just too much. It's too much for our school district. Not all school districts have mandates, and I know that the county health department recommends that there's masking indoors, but not a mandate. It's just too much. Let the families choose for themselves. And stop sending kids, healthy kids, home just because of an arbitrary close contact, you might have been exposed decision. I'm not even sure if that's been evaluated for effectiveness, which might be why you've been changing the mitigation strategies of the last month or so. And that's more reasonable, so thank you. That's what we're targeting. All this is affecting the kids' esteem. They're feeling punished socially. I don't buy the fact that kids want to come to school to wear a mask. I wasn't looking forward to wearing masks. So I think they're being cynical. We all know how kids can be. We're in a land of innocent to proven guilty, so I don't understand, and I haven't for months, how we got to a point where we're sick until proven healthy. I'm really struggling with that. So remember, when kids feel punished, repressed, and taught to fear, their whole well-being suffers. So please.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Blanca Stevens. Stevens?
I'm here.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Blanca Navarro Stever. I have been in SUSD for 15 years and until recently have been strong supporter of public education. Why would I be questioning the value of SUSD schools as so long? SUSD has been declining in its ability to provide academic excellence in our learning communities. I believe that a great academic education is a great equalizer in society by providing opportunities for those willing to put in effort and diligence. Let's look at how our district is serving our students. According to a letter sent on June 1st, 2021 from the president of the SUSD governing board, only 60% of Scottsdale students tested proficient in English language arts and math. This is the minimum standard for the state. We can't even meet the minimum standard. What's changed? We'll see. Furthermore, 16% of 8th graders are performing 3 or more grade levels below. That means our 8th graders are performing on a 5th grade level. Unacceptable. Let's talk money and building great schools. In-district enrollment this year dropped by 5,300 students, which means SUSD lost funding, tax dollars, for each student who left. According to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee, Arizona Public Schools now have $14,326 to spend per pupil in 2021-22. This means SUSD lost approximately $76 million because parents largely chose charter schools over public schools for their children. This is a huge loss in revenue for our district, and that could be used better for academic. And this is just my opinion. Parents, my perspective, ELA books, links to websites that at times are inappropriate and bad for our students. You'll have to be diligent and talk with your children. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Caroline Ho. Our next speaker is Caroline Ho.
Hi, members of the school board. By virtue of the fact that you were, hey, would you pay attention to me and stop my thing? Please pay attention. Please stop it and start it over. I'll wait till I have your attention.
Your time is running. You have 2 minutes.
Pay attention to me. It's your duty by the virtue of the fact that we voted for you and voted for you to protect our children. You all should have voted against the supplemental materials that you voted in June that put pornography in the hands of our children. They include things like suicide, mental illness, underage drug abuse, lots of sexual abuse. They sprinkle in extreme bullying. By the way, you had a really bad case of that at Chaparral High School, where a kid is very injured. These materials make people feel bad about themselves. They glorify drug use, and they glorify drug use by children. One of the books in the supplemental materials includes an 8-year-old girl who was raped by a teenager and later sexually abused. There's excessive profane language, child porn, child abuse, alcoholism, mental instability, and sexual abuse. And you voted for that. Your job is to protect children, and you're not doing your job. You should have looked at the materials. You should have vetted them. You shouldn't have sent it to a committee who didn't vet those materials, didn't read them before you allow our children access to that. You should have been focusing on a high academic standard that's not focused on the lens of CRT.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Brian Coughlin. Brian Coughlin.
First, I'd like to thank the board for giving me time to speak today. I'm disappointed in your decision over masking is an understatement. I know that Governor Ducey's executive order was overruled on technicality, but you had the power to make it pro-choice or not. With over a year of data to analyze, the most recent global random control test studies on masking show no efficacy to masking in schools or in public in general. The numbers are decreasing, as you mentioned, Dr. Menzel, but not due to masking. It's due to seasonality. If you're not familiar with Dr. Edgar Hope Simpson, who spent decades of research and wrote the book Transmission of Epidemic Influenza, he showed that respiratory viruses spread on seasonality, not winter, spring, summer, or fall, but based on latitudinal zones. Southern states like Florida, Arizona, Texas fall on the edge of the North Tropic Zone. The season's ending. That's why the rates are going down. But when you look in the Northeast, New York, Midwest, Illinois, Montana, they fall into the temperate latitude zone. Cases will rise there. They're already starting. Masking, no masking. That's a respiratory virus. It simply doesn't matter. What most disappoints me about the board, though, it's a lack of objectiveness and critical thinking. It's clearly dominated by groupthink. This adds no value to the district. Looking at school age data that was just published last month on the MedArchive public server showed that ages 0 to 19, infected fatality rate of 0.0027%. That's survival 99.9973. Johns Hopkins published a paper the month before that. When adjusting for comorbidities, showed 0 infected fatality rate. I understand the playbook here of what it looks to be. We're not following the science, the critical thinking of science, which is concerning to me. Your next move is going to be forced vaccination to attend Scottsdale Unified School District. That'll be very disappointing.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Solom.
Hello, good evening. My name is Sarah Solom, and I am a parent here in the SUSD district. Dr. Menzel, I'd like to thank you for clarifying the statement about the court case today, because actually in the SUSD email that was sent out, it stated that mandatory mask bans were unconstitutional. So please make sure that the data or the information that you're sending out to the entire district is actually accurate information, because as we've talked about many times, misinformation actually a lot of times does stem from the district. As we go into the directive for mask mandates here in SUSD, I'd like to point out some interesting things. Item D on here states that there is an educational exception, and with a staff member may, with their school principal, have permission to permit students within the room to remove their mask during the delivery of core educational activities. And I would like to think that everything that SUSD does is a core educational activity, especially in the younger grades when they are learning how to read and speak. We're talking about phonics. We're talking about enunciation of words, and learning those things at a young age is so developmentally important. Please consider that as you extend this mask mandate now, and then you're saying it's going to be in effect until 2 weeks after fall break, but as of right now, you say the only thing that's better is a vaccination. And that's not going to happen for our young kids, whether that's because it's not approved or parents aren't ready to choose that yet. So I'm afraid that you're going to continue to extend this, and as our young children face continuing trying to learn in these masks, that is dangerous. And then as we go into it, the termination of this directive is just the superintendent no longer believes that the use of masks indoors must be mandatory. I think Dr. Hartwell said it best when she was campaigning for this rule. Some government agencies just seem to be scientifically illiterate, and I would say this directive is just that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dave Seligson.
Hi, guys. Sucks having to wear this mask. Whew. Mesa is the largest school district in the state, 3 times larger than SUSD. They've been operating successfully, mask optional. They are following the MCDPH guidelines. Why can't SUSD do the same thing? With all due respect to the PhD members of the board, you're not real medical doctors. Some of you aren't even parents. Let the parents choose the risks and mitigation strategy for their own children. I'd also like to say, recall SUSD.org. Recall SUSD.org. I hope there's a camera in here. Recall SUSD.org. Recall SUSD.org. Recall SUSD.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Rebecca Page.
My name is Rebecca Page. I'm a mother of 4 young men, 2 of which attend the SUSD school district. It is my God-given right as their mother to protect them and to nurture them until they are of age to make their own paths in life. I am proud to be an American. I have lived in 2 socialist countries. I lived in Germany for 5 years. I lived in Canada for 3 years. I have walked the concentration camp Dachau, and I was so horrified by looking at all the pictures of the millions of children that were murdered. And I asked myself, how can this happen? So you know what I did? I went to the library because this was before Google, and I spent hours researching it. And you know what? One by one, they took our rights away. And this stupid mask mandate, one single human hair is measured at 70 to 90 microns, one single hair. The COVID virus is measured at 0.12 microns. Your masks, these masks, do nothing against the COVID virus. Nothing. There is zero efficacy. If you're supposed to get COVID, if I'm supposed to get COVID, then it happens. If I'm supposed to die with COVID, then it happens. That's just the plain truth. I appreciate your feeble attempt in protecting our children from COVID-19. However, I completely disagree with it. And I will call you out as a hypocrite. We've all seen the videos of you out at the bars without your mask. If you really believed in it, you'd be wearing a mask. Shame on you. These masks do one thing amazing. They impede the lack of oxygen. I am raising lions. I'm not raising sheep. The health of my children is not your concern. So don't
Thank
pretend you can.
Our next speaker will be Shannon. Our next speaker is Shannon Myers.
I would like to put this board on notice that if they're going to require masks to be worn in schools, they will also then take the liability for its adverse effects for my children and any others that are being forced to and do not wish to comply. That includes but is not limited to physical, mental, emotional, social, breathing issues, teeth and mouth issues, learning disabilities caused by limiting visual mouth cues, acne, and a wide variety of other issues that we don't even know that you are causing right now. You are and have been now put on notice. You are overstepping and out of control. You should be arrested for kidnapping our children. This is forced action. These masks are medical devices. You cannot force our children to wear medical devices. This is not about safety. You can wear any kind of mask you want. It could be a dirty dish rag. It doesn't matter. It's not going to do anything. Also, if we were introducing pornography in our own homes, child services would be at our doors, taking our children from us. What are you doing? You are failing us. Wake up.
Thank you. Our next speaker.
Sorry, I forgot my mask.
Our next.
Sorry about that. I didn't do it on purpose. Trust me. I wish I would have thought of it.
Our next speaker is Jane Herges.
Hello, my name is Jane Herges. I'm a mother of 3. I grew up in a home with 2 public school educators. My parents have a combined 60-plus year in LA Unified School District. They used to be the biggest public school advocates until recently, as well as me. Sadly, they have watched the public system take on powers that don't belong to them. For example, making health decisions for children that their parents don't agree with. And let's be honest, you guys don't even believe them. Like she mentioned, you've been seen out on town going against your own little mandates. The hypocrisy has been displayed over and over. When you are seen out on the town without your masks yourself, this has never been about health. Every stat has been based on lies. Hospitals getting paid $46,000 to write COVID on death certificates, PCR tests being faulty and unreliable, doctors and nurses now being fired for not complying with mandates after working for a year and a half with and for COVID patients. At no point has anyone ever talked about how to build our own immune systems. That should be the first thing the school does, is teach how to build this immune system. We know where this is headed. Start with the masks, then force the testing, then force quarantines. The CDC has shielding camps in place. I have one question for you guys and all the educators supporting forced quarantines and camps. Are you guys gonna play part in that? Being okay with leading our kids to the slaughterhouse? I have hope that you guys will stop pushing this evil agenda. God bless you guys, and God bless this great nation that I believe will turn back to God and be saved from those that are influenced by media, Hollywood, and corrupt organizations. I believe in humanity. I believe in you guys.
Thank you. That concludes our public Please sit down. Please sit down. Please sit down. Please sit down. Thank you. The board will now move to agenda item 8, consent agenda, board action required. Are there any questions or discussion about the consent agenda as presented? The chair moves to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Vice President Sanowski seconds. It is moved and seconded that the board approve agenda item 8, consent agenda, as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 5-0. The board will now move to agenda item 9, action items. 9A, approval revisions to policy GCQF, discipline, suspension, and dismissal of professional staff members. Dr. Menzel.
Thank you, President Greenberg and members of the governing board. As you know, at the last board meeting, we reviewed these policies, and there were some changes that were requested related to this policy. I'd like to turn it over to Lori Bird, our general counsel, to review those and answer any questions you may have.
I hate to be cliche, but is this on?
Yeah.
You have all been given copies of the proposed language in response to your feedback, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about that language.
Thank you. Are there any questions about agenda item 9A, policy GCQF? Board Member Beckman.
Hi, Ms. Bird. With regard to step 1A2, just had a question about the verbiage. We had written earlier in the policy that, and I'm writing here, that we would have, the hearing or something would happen in no less than 2 days. Okay, the notice, and then we go to step 1A2. And it's not, we don't mention no less than 2 days in that. So I'm wondering if there's a reason. It's not the same verbiage. So if you pull up the policy.
That particular verbiage wasn't changed, Board Member Beckman. We didn't discuss that. If you look under step 2, hearing for suspension without pay or dismissal, the language that was changed was that reads, unless the governing board votes at its annual organizational meeting to conduct the hearings. All hearings conducted pursuant to this section shall be conducted before a hearing officer. And to my knowledge, that was the only concern that was raised. And it was...
correct.
And the language you're referring to was not revised.
This may not be something that's raised, so we can address this later. I'm just curious, maybe if you have an answer now. I understand if you don't, since I'm probably surprising you with a little bit here.
And you're looking at?
I'm looking at, if you look at E1, where
So
it says suspension.
page 2.
Statutory requirements, E1.
Hold on.
Correct.
Okay. I think that what you're looking at is, remember that each of these provisions addresses a different type of discipline.
Right.
And so different types of discipline under the policy may have slightly different requirements for due process.
Okay, and that might make sense, but that was my question really. Was there a particular reason that in something like this, shall have the right to a hearing, we would make a point, or not now, it's not something we raised recently, but in your professional opinion, that we would suggest that the supervising administrator would schedule a meeting no less than 2 days, no more than 10 days after the date here, but then further down, we don't mention the no less than 2 days. I know it's a detailed, like kind of a nuance
Right.
here, but I just am curious.
It's my understanding that there are more, when an employee is facing termination or suspension without pay, it's a more formal process. The 2 days that's noted when an employee is disciplined, that 2 days is a meeting with their supervisor or the administrator. And so, again, this is policy that was approved before. It's statutory. And so I can look into that more for you if you would like.
That's fine.
However, this is not a change from policy that had already been approved previously.
And again, I understand that we didn't discuss it last time. Then next question really quickly. Step 4, under the appeal.
Yes.
So the governing board may appoint a hearing officer, and this may be a different spot. And this one, and before I thought we defaulted to a hearing officer. Maybe not in this particular sentence, but you see the appeal, let me see.
I see step 4. The
Step
heading is
4,
step 4
under the
appeal.
Sorry, it's difficult to bring you and I to the same
Right.
spot in these lengths.
I think we're in the same spot. I'm just not sure I'm understanding
We
the
had verbiage that
question.
said, the governing board may appoint a hearing officer. And I was curious if we were going to reflect the language in this paragraph to describe the default which we had to the hearing officer.
The section you're referring to is page 7 of 10, step 2, hearing for suspension without pay or dismissal, section A. So it's a separate section.
Okay.
Correct.
So I'm scrolling through there trying to find
Right,
it, but if you
correct.
found it, great. So we
I
are
have a
going to take
paper
these
copy,
separate.
board member,
No, it's
if that'd
okay.
be helpful.
So we're going to take these, we're not always going to, we raised this last time, we're not always going to default to a hearing officer. There's going to be cases where we might decide to and we might not. That's my question.
The language, when it's a hearing for suspension without pay or dismissal, the option or the general, well, unless the board, whoever that may be, votes at their organizational meeting to hear these matters as a board, it will automatically default to a hearing officer being appointed. Because that was, as I understood it, the preference that the board had expressed for this provision.
And that it was, and that's the reason for my question, is because in this final draft, there was a paragraph that said we may. And if you're saying that that is in there just from a,
And again, I would ask, is
Okay.
it the same disciplinary circumstance?
I don't want to waste the board's time, so I will find this and I will get it to you later. And because I believe we will default to what we voted on, so regardless, if that is the intent of the board and what we voted on, then it might just be a verbiage change. So
Okay.
I will get it to you. Thank you.
Right.
Board Member Beckman, I do take your note, though, on under procedure for discipline under ARS 15341, page 4 of 10, A2, the reference to 10 working days. It may be worthwhile to change not more than 10 working days after the date of the certificated staff member receives the notice to in accordance with statutory requirements, section E, which is that suspension under ARS 341 is 2 days, and E2, dismissal or dismissal with suspension under ARS 15539 is 10 days. Or no, sorry, E1, apologies, ignore me. Under statutory requirements, section E1. So we would change the idea being that rather than saying not more than 10 days or 2 days in those situations, we could make an amendment now, correct? Approve this policy as amended?
You can make an amendment now. I would want to make sure that any amendment you make conforms to statute, however. And I can't, I don't have that particular statute in front of me. But yes, I mean, procedurally, you can make an
Well-
amendment now.
So that was my concern, is that the language be reflective of consistency throughout
Right.
the policies. And if it was our intent to have a different process in one type of hearing, so be it. But if our intent was to be consistent in the process across all hearings, for instance, with the length of days, then
Well, in all fairness, at the same time, it does say scheduled not more than 10 days, so that would include the 2-day provision. It's oddly worded, and that is a portion our general counsel is correct. That is a provision that was not amended, so that's been here for some time. But as long as you're okay and we're all understanding that we will be complying with statute and the governing board may appoint a hearing officer if
course.
desired, I think that the policy is okay. Does that work for the board?
It worked. I'll shoot you an email, and as long as what the board had as far as its intent when we voted, if it's okay the way we have written it, I'm good with it.
Okay, I'm making a note, Board Member Beckman.
Are there any further questions or comments about agenda item 9A? The chair moves to approve action item 9A, approval of revisions to policy GCQF, discipline, suspension, and dismissal of professional staff members. Is there a second?
Second.
Vice President Sinowski seconds. It is moved and seconded to approve action item 9A as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 5-0. The board will now move to action item 9B, approval revisions to policy JJJ, extracurricular activity and cultural expression. Dr. Menzel.
Again, this was reviewed at the last governing board meeting. There were some changes and important questions that were raised, and Lori Bird is here to answer any specific questions you have about those modifications.
So what was discussed at the board meeting, there were two changes originally to this. One was that we needed to add that cultural expression is allowed at extracurricular activities. There was no follow-up or feedback upon that provision. However, there was a concern by the board that as the academic eligibility language was written, that it was somewhat ambiguous or could be subjective, and that it may not reflect the intent that wanted to be conveyed. So that language, which is on page 1, under A, it's about 2/3 of the way down the page, has been reflected to be much more specific and to clarify the academic eligibility requirements for students who are either members of competitive athletic teams or competitive extracurricular activities.
Board Member Hart-Wells.
Thank you, Ms. Bird, for making those changes. My understanding is the current language that we're looking at is consistent with the AIA academic eligibility as
correct.
well. Thank you for making the changes and being responsive to your comments.
Are there any other comments or questions about this agenda item? Thank you. The chair moves to approve action item 9B, approval of revisions to policy JJJ, extracurricular activity and cultural expression. Is there a second?
Second?
Board Member Hartwell seconds. It is moved and seconded that the board approve action item 9B, approval of revisions to policy JJJ, extracurricular activity and cultural expression. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 5-0. The board will now move to action item 9C, support high school musical nominations, National School Boards Association Annual Conference. Dr. Menzel.
Thank you, President Greenberg. We're bringing this request forward. As some of you know, not too long ago, the National School Boards Association put out a call for nominations for student performances at their national conference. Happens every year. It's an important part of the conference to elevate student talent. It always centers those conferences in a way that highlights what's happening in our public schools. Because the conference is in San Diego, I thought it might be interesting to forward a nomination from Scottsdale Unified School District. So I worked with Michelle Irvin, our Fine Arts and PE coordinator, to identify which of our performing arts groups might be able to participate, meet the criteria of the NSBA, and also be eligible to travel on the dates that have been identified. She initially listed a number, 5 or 6 different performing programs across the district before indicating that because of their schedules, they're all performing in some other places and have other commitments, that she was recommending the Saguaro High School Big Band Ensemble. In addition to being available, they also had a refereed video performance that can be submitted for the nomination. So for those reasons, if the board is so inclined, we're recommending approval because NSBA does require governing board approval before we submit the nomination, which is due October 7th. We would be taking the funding for this out of indirect costs, and we anticipate those costs not to exceed $88,460. Happy to answer any questions.
Board Member Beckman, and then Board Member Hartwells.
Okay, Shannon, I had spoken with you earlier. Can you please kind of go over for the public and for the board why indirect costs? Is this a usual and customary type of submittal? Is it equitable, meaning if we have other schools that want to do something similar, are we going to be able to say yes to them? And by the way, Saguaro's band is fabulous, so I'm excited to see this happen. But could you just kind of give us a summary about that?
Absolutely.
It's on, you just can't hear yourself.
Is it on? Okay. So we chose 570 for this fund. Typically, when students do travel, they do fundraising, boosters help out, they seek tax credit contributions to do that. The reason I picked Fund 570 for this particular trip is because this trip is a little bit different than other experiences. We specifically asked a school to participate in this activity and to travel to where they're having the conference. And so that's why I looked at using a different fund instead of saying, we'd like you to do this, and telling the school, we'd like you to submit this and move forward with it, and then telling them, but also you have to come up with all of the fundraising money for it. We have helped other groups out when they do field trips. We've helped Minitown out in the past. We've helped out Unitown in the past. So there have been other field trip experiences where they do need a little extra funding, and we have helped them out with it. This is unique just because it's not something we've done in the past. And like I said, it was something that we went to the school and said, based off of your availability and meeting the qualifications for it, we'd like it if you would consider doing it. So that's part of the reason why we didn't follow the normal funding sources of where we would usually pay for that. We do try to help out other groups when there's funding issues. If it's thousands and thousands of dollars, that would probably raise a little bit more question, but we have tried to help out other groups as well in the past. I know the superintendents in the past have said, I'd like to donate funds from my discretionary to be able to help schools out if they're short on things for like robotic competitions and whatnot. So it's not the normal field trip request that we would do. It's not the normal funding we would do, but it's not totally out of the norm of what we've done in the past for other groups.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Hartwells.
Thank you. So my questions are not directed to the substance of the nomination at all, but rather to the broader organizational perspective that this appears to be somewhat precedent-setting, that the board is identifying funds for select activities. So along the lines of equity to the other programs and schools that might have an interest in these kinds of cost sharing, is the 570 funds something that there's going to be a process built around for other schools and clubs and programs to request subsidy? Well, I think part of what's making this a little bit different, and Dr. Menzel, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was my understanding that to submit an application to be considered for this, the governing board had to approve that selection, which is not typical of any other field trip or any other the governing board approves the activities that we do, but it's not that we bring specific activities and say, we need you to specifically approve this to even be able to be qualified to do this activity. So I think part of this is a little bit unique in what we've done, from what we've done in the past.
I would just like to add to that. The Saguaro Big Band did not come to us saying, hey, we'd like to perform at the NSBA. The question was raised by me to Michelle Irvin. Do we have performing groups that might meet the expectations that NSBA has in this nomination? And then I checked with the governing board president to say, do you think the district might be interested in moving forward a nomination? So if we're the ones who are asking one of our groups to perform somewhere, it seems like it would be reasonable for us to cover those costs. The inverse, schools all the time are looking for opportunities and fundraising to support various activities, and we have a number of different ways to do that. We've got support from the Scottsdale Unified Foundation. We have support from other philanthropic organizations. And as Shannon mentioned, there have been times where we've also used funding like this where we've had shortfall and needed to fill in. But I would say that unless we're going to consistently nominate groups to participate in some event that requires travel, I don't know that it's particularly precedent-setting. I thought this was an opportunity because of the relatively close proximity and knowing that we have high-quality performing arts groups that we could consider it. We don't have to do it, but that was the rationale behind it.
Well, I guess my comment is maybe it should be precedent-setting. I'm coming at this from an angle I don't think you're entirely appreciating, and that is that maybe there needs to be something a little more like this for the schools and their activities, so that there is more opportunity across the board, not just when we find the National School Board Association has an opportunity. And I appreciate that this particular activity requires board approval. That does say that in the eligibility requirements. I see that. So I understand why it's before us.
I will say as well that all overnight out-of-state field trips have to be approved by the governing board as well. So if you're traveling overnight, you're going out of state, those are always, it's in a consent item, but those are submitted to the board as well. We haven't had very many in the last year and a half,
right?
Or really hardly at all. But so those always do go to the board, but this was unique in that they had to have your approval to even attempt to be able to do that activity.
And I'm digging this a little deeper, that not the approval, but the funding. And that's what I'm asking, is maybe there should be some thinking around what opportunities this could be precedent setting, at least in part, so that there is more active equity, not just this was a one-off. So maybe it shouldn't be a one-off. Thank you.
Do any other board members have any questions or comments? Board Member Beckman?
To that point, I hope, we are part of things like this more often. However, and Saguaro is fantastic, but should we do this again next year and the year after and the year after, how are we going to choose which one of our fabulous fine arts programs can we go out to pick, ask Michelle Irvin or et cetera to pick to go forward? Because this could be a fantastic thing, and it's considerable in cost, but what is going to be that criteria by which we say you're the one that's going next year? Do we know?
Well, because the National School Board Association Conference moves all over the country, it's really not practical to consider applying when it's in Chicago or in Florida. It just the cost is significantly more, and the likelihood, they only pick 3 performing groups, so the likelihood of picking one of our groups for travel that far away is diminished. So this was sort of one of those things where, to be candid, I heard that San Diego was Phoenix South in the summer when I moved here. So, it just seemed to me like that it's a reasonable commute to get there. I think, and I believe Michelle Irvin's in the cloud, our performing arts groups know where there are lots of opportunities to perform. I'm not familiar with what all of those are, nor am I familiar with ones that they might be interested and eligible to participate in but don't apply because of funding constraints. So, Michelle, if you're there, that might be helpful information here. I don't know that it's just NSBA that we're talking about. I think, if I understand Dr. Hartwell's, it's how do we enhance additional opportunities where funding might be a barrier for our groups to perform on a bigger stage.
Hi, thank you. Can you guys hear me? Yes? Wonderful. Yeah, that's a big question. I know that I've competed with groups all over the country and internationally, so I really want to thank all of you for your growing support of this. This was a wonderful idea that was thrown together by Dr. Menzel, and I went and I looked to see what groups were available. So this was kind of a great way to do it. If this is something we want to look at, I do think maybe we could go along the proximity issue or various like that, or we could have an application process. But it definitely opens up the doors, and we probably should think about the type of activities we want to do, maybe performing at national conferences. That could be one of our things. So be it a school board association, be it at some big national conference, that might be like Midwest or, things like that. There's a bunch of big conferences that happen on the West Coast, so that might be an idea as well.
Thank you. Board Member Beckman?
So I appreciate that, thank you. But speaking to Dr. Hartwell's comment, this is something I would like to see more of. And if Ms. Irvin could at some point identify some worthy fine arts, national things that we could consider as a board, I would really appreciate hearing, what her criteria would be, the cost, barriers, et cetera, because these opportunities are fantastic for our students. So thank you.
Vice President Sanowski?
Ms. Irvin, while we have you on the line, a quick question for you. How many of our performing arts groups typically do seek out competitions and participations out of state, or even within our state, but travel to competitions?
Generally, quite a bit of our high schools do that, and they also do basically curricular type of activities at universities or theme parks. But some of the things that kind of pop in my mind, if we want to look at things more local, could be like possibly the Rose Bowl Parade or various other events that might not be as expensive to travel. Like I did the, London Day Parade. I don't think we want to throw that in there because that was pretty expensive. So lots of options. If I give me a little time, I can pop together some local ideas. But generally speaking, most of our high schools travel and our middle schools, and they do like music festivals and stuff like that.
You read my mind. I was going to ask you for that. So yes, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Just kind of an idea of, let's share with the community how many of our groups do have these great opportunities for student learning.
Absolutely. In fact, quite a few of them are going in April, which is why that list kind of got chopped down.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your work in this area too. It's exceptional.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other board member questions or comments? Well, thank you for that lively discussion, and I'm sure the administration will work to help out our various fine arts and other extracurricular groups with funding as much as possible. The chair moves to approve action item 9C, support high school musical nominations, National School Boards Association Annual Conference, the recommendation being Saguaro High School's Big Band. Is there a second?
Second.
Vice President Sanowski seconds. It is moved and seconded that the board approve action item 9C as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries 5-0. The board will now move to agenda item 10. Are there any future items that the board would like discussed? Board Member Hart-Wells, and then Vice President Sanowski.
I actually have a couple of, one's a follow-up from the public comment period. We had a member of the public and parent ask about an RFQ that was, I got the impression it was not this past summer, but the previous summer. So that predated you, Dr. Menzel, or was around the time you're transitioning on board. So I would just ask that we refer that to the administration for follow-up, please. That's pretty old. And then the second is almost a housekeeping question, I believe. When we're talking about policy, is the community seen on the YouTube video the language that we're talking about?
I don't believe that that's visible on the video. We do link the policies on the website so they could pull it up on their computer, but it's not shown on the screen as we're discussing it.
Unless
right.
the presenter puts it up on the screen.
Okay.
So at the last board meeting, when we were showing all of them, then the public could not only just access it by going to the website, but could also see it during the live presentation.
Okay, so the black lines are available to the public on the SUSD webpage, even if during the live meeting the language is not shown in the PowerPoint or whatever whatever's the screen is. Okay, great, thank you. I wanted to just make sure that we are making that information available so it can follow along. It's very hard to follow along with something you can't see and read. And actually, I don't have any topics. I just had those two follow-up items. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Sanowski.
And Dr. Hartwell's actually asked my question as far as follow-up for the DEI and Diamond Strategies, that conversation. Another thing I'd like to be, like for us to consider is that reference of the dead spot in communication as referred to during open or public comment tonight, and the gathering of special ed parents. I know we have discussed that in the past, and I would like to suggest that we bring that up as not just a future consideration, but a future action as well that we put in place. We get going on this because we've been talking about the need to improve our communication and services throughout our district, and this would be a very useful way to do that. And in regards to the policies, when we're discussing them, I think it would be beneficial for us to include those so that the audience, especially the black line copy, so that the audience can see what we're referring to. So I would like to suggest that when we're discussing policy changes, that we have it visual during the presentation, during our discussion as well.
They are actually available to the tech team, and they could have put it up, I guess. I just didn't ask for them to do it because I wasn't expecting to make a presentation but only answer questions. But they're actually available and were made available, and I apologize for those
no need to
not being put up.
apologize. I just think it would be very helpful to clarify for people what we're discussing. I think that's helpful. And I want to just commend you too. I really like that black line copy because it shows the changes that we're discussing, the underlined and strike-throughs. That's a really helpful way to address changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Lindsay.
Yeah, one of the common things that I've heard from years is concerns and complaints from former admin, current admin, staff about SPED issues, parents. And I think it's about time that we start talking about doing a SPED audit. So.
Thank you. Are there any further future items for consideration? Okay, the board will move to agenda item 11, dates of upcoming meetings. Our next meeting is Tuesday, October 5th, 2021 at 6 p.m. That is a special governing board meeting at the MDA. Monday, October 18th, 2021 at 5 p.m. That is the board workshop at the MDA. Then Tuesday, October 26th, 2021 at 6 p.m., the regular governing board meeting at Coronado High School. The board will now move to agenda item 12, governing board reports. Do any board members have items they wish to report? Board Member Beckman. Thank you. Vice President Sanowski.
Well said. I would just like to take a moment to share that several of us, Board President Greenberg, Dr. Menzel, and Council Byrd, had the opportunity to attend the Arizona School Board Association Law Conference. It was very beneficial, great learning opportunity. So that's my report, Chair.
Thank you, and I just add that Board Member Hartwells was present as well. Board Member Lindsay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that with Mr. Charles and his big birthday celebration, there were two parents at Cochise that were instrumental in putting that whole thing together, Julie Scholze and Leslie Steinberg. So I just wanted to make sure they got a big thank you.
Thank you for doing that. Are there any further governing board reports? With no further governing board reports, the board will move to agenda item 13, adjournment. The chair moves to adjourn this regular board meeting of the Scottsdale Unified Number 48 Governing Board on September 28th, 2021 at 7:45 p.m. Is there a second? Board Member Beckman seconds. It is moved and seconded that the board adjourn this regular meeting of the Scottsdale Unified Number 48 Governing Board at 7:45 p.m. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The meeting is adjourned.